You've joined us for a deep dive into, well, a truly compelling and undeniably strange area today.
Definitely strange.
The source material you shared is the book Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, an insider's account of the secret government UFO program.
Right.
The authors, you've got James T. Lakatsky. He's got this DIA intelligence background, physics, rocketry. Then Colme Kelleher, a biochemist, lead investigator for NIDs and Bay Gas, and George Knapp, the journalist.
Yeah, that's quite a team. You have the insider, the sort of boots-on-the-ground scientist, and the investigative reporter. It promises a pretty unique perspective.
Exactly. So our mission for you today is to really unpack the core claims in this book. What was this alleged secret program actually doing? What kind of phenomena were they looking at? And why is Skinwalker Ranch, this place already famous for weirdness?
Yeah.
Why is it so central to their story?
It's positioned as the key, isn't it?
It really is. This book claims it's an insider's account, and we're going to try and pull out the most crucial bits, lay it out clearly so you can grasp the main points without getting totally bogged down.
And we should probably mention that disclaimer right up front, the one on the cover.
No, good point.
It says, cleared for public release by the Dovney. But, and this is important, that absolutely doesn't mean the DoD agrees with it or says it's factually correct.
Right. It's likely just a check to make sure no classified secrets slipped out, not an endorsement.
Exactly. So approach with, an open but critical mind. These are extraordinary claims.
Precisely. Which takes us to the book's main argument, that there was this big, covert DIA program called the Advanced Aerospace Weapon System Applications Program, AOSIP.
AAWSIP, right?
And they argued this went way beyond just studying UAPs in the conventional sense. It got deep into what they call high strangeness. And Skinwalker Ranch in Utah was like a key lab for this.
A nexus point for all the weirdness.
Okay, let's dig into that. The book really seems to be trying to, correct the record on government UFO stuff, doesn't it?
It does. It suggests that ATIP, the program most people have heard about, well, maybe that's not the whole story. Or maybe it's even, a misdirection.
That's the implication. They're basically saying, look, everyone's focused on ATIP, but the real action, the bigger program, was AWSA. They want to paint what they see as the truer picture.
Right, a more complete account from their perspective.
And according to the book, AWSAP started in a pretty specific way. It was apparently Dr. James Lakatsky's idea.
The author, yeah.
Right. After he apparently had some kind of significant personal experience at Skinwalker Ranch, which, interestingly, was facilitated by Robert Bigelow, who owned the ranch then, and Senator Harry Reid.
Reid's name comes up a lot.
It does. So Lakatsky proposes this to the DIA. Senator Reid gets behind it, becomes a big champion for it, and manages to secure, what was it, $22 million?
Yeah, $22 million. Significant funding. And crucially, from the black budget.
Right, which means it wasn't under normal public oversight. That kind of money, spent discreetly, suggests somebody high up took this very seriously.
Oh, absolutely. That level of classified funding implies a perceived national security angle, even if it was, unconventional, tied to the ranch phenomena.
So how did it work? Operationally. The book says Lakatsky managed it from within the DIA.
Okay.
And the actual contract, the research work, went to Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Space Studies. Big ass.
Bigelow again. Makes sense, given his prior NIDS work there.
Exactly. And Dr. Colme Kelleher, our other author, he was the deputy administrator at BAS. So he was overseeing the day-to-day stuff. They even claim they had up to 50 full-time investigators.
Beastie, that's a substantial operation, not just a couple of guys in a back room.
Definitely paints a picture of a well-funded, organized effort, leveraging BAS's existing, very specific experience at the ranch.
It suggests they weren't starting from scratch. They were building on years of prior investigation.
And the scope, the mandate for AIDSA, as the book lays it out, it was incredibly broad.
Right, not just UAPs.
Not at all. They were looking into potentially revolutionary aerospace tech, maybe anti-gravity, stuff like that, analyzing UAP intrusions on military bases, so it's more traditional.
Standard threat assessment, yeah.
But then, like you said, it veers off. They were assessing foreign UAP programs, specifically mentioning a Soviet-Russian one called Thread 3.
They're 3, interesting. Geopolitical angle.
Yeah. Exploring those exotic technologies we mentioned. And then critically, digging into all the bizarre phenomena at Skinwalker Ranch itself, it clearly wasn't just about nuts and bolts craft.
No, the inclusion of the ranch and the explicit mention of bizarre phenomena signals they were casting a much wider net. thinking outside the conventional aerospace box.
Which leads us right to Skinwalker Ranch. The book really makes it the operational and conceptual heart of AEOWSA.
The epicenter.
Yeah. It's where, for these investigators, apparently, the line between UAP and paranormal stuff just blurred or disappeared entirely. It wasn't just lights in the sky. It was this whole spectrum of baffling events.
Okay, so what kind of things are we talking about? The book details quite a list, I imagine.
Oh, yeah. Get ready. It's a lot. The book claims AAWSA documented this huge range of anomalies tied specifically to the ranch. UAP sightings, obviously.
Like what kind of UAPs?
Luminous orbs to different colors, silent triangular craft, even invisible objects that apparently messed with electromagnetic fields.
Invisible. Wow.
Yeah. And objects seen entering or exiting what looked like portals. They also mentioned doing a detailed analysis of the famous Tic Tac incident in this context.
Okay, so classic UAP reports, but also more exotic stuff like portals.
Exactly. But that's just scratching the surface. Then you get into the creature encounters.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, not just deer and coyotes. We're talking unusually large wolf-like creatures, really resilient ones, apparently, maybe even unharmed by bullets, echoing those local Skinwalker legends.
The bulletproof wolf thing, right. That's classic Skinwalker lore.
Totally. Also, reports of Bigfoot-like creatures, shadow figures.
Yeah.
And get this, a frog with an alligator mouth.
Okay, now that's just deeply weird. A frog with an alligator mouth.
I know. It sounds like something out of a fever dream or really specific folklore. It pushes way beyond known biology.
Absolutely. It makes you wonder, physical creatures or something else entirely.
Right. And it keeps going. Poltergeist activity. Lots of it.
Like in the movies. Things flying around.
Pretty much. Unexplained object movement, disembodied voices, weird sounds, sudden cold spots or heat spots. But here's the really unsettling part.
Uh-huh.
This stuff wasn't just happening on the ranch. It was reportedly happening in the investigators' homes, miles away.
Ah, the hitchhiker effect.
Exactly. That's what they call it. This idea that the phenomenon, whatever it is, could somehow attach itself to people.
That's genuinely creepy, so it follows them.
Apparently. Manifesting in their houses, disrupting their lives, potentially affecting their families. Far from Utah, the book suggests it's like a contagion of strangeness.
Wow. Okay, that raises some serious questions. And it didn't stop there, right? The hitchhiker thing?
Nope. The book claims it even spread to family members who had never been to the ranch.
That's profoundly disturbing if true.
It really is. Then there are the animal mutilations.
Cattle mutilations, that's another classic element.
Yep. Repeated instances. Cattle found with these surgically precise removals of organs, often with no blood around. A known phenomenon, but apparently happening recurrently there.
Mm-hmm.
And they even mentioned dogs being vaporized.
Vaporized, seriously.
That's the word used in the book.
Yeah.
Chilling. Whatever that implies, it's way beyond normal predators or, conventional explanations.
Yeah, vaporized suggests some kind of unknown technology or force at play. That's extreme.
And the list continues. Health and biological effects on the personnel and their families.
What kind of effects?
Unusual medical issues popping up. Autoimmune disorders. They specifically mentioned thyroid disease. They even saw measurable changes in blood markers for some people.
So physical effects potentially linked to exposure.
That's what AWSA apparently started thinking. They proposed this infectious agent model, almost like the human body itself was acting as a sensor or readout system for these weird influences.
An infectious agent model. That's a fascinating, if speculative, way to frame it. Trying to find a biological angle.
Yeah, trying to make sense of it. Then you have environmental anomalies. Weird spikes in EM fields, radiation, strange ground markings, crop circles, ice circles, bizarre tracks.
Yeah, kind of tracks.
Big three-toed, like a giant raptor or something. And human-like tracks that seem to, walk over fences without breaking stride.
Okay, physics-defying tracks. Add it to the list.
And finally, psychic or mental effects. People feeling like their emotions, especially fear, were being manipulated, maybe by the orbs. Reports of spontaneous psychic stuff, telepathy, even communication experiments that showed weird, non-random interference.
It's just an overwhelming catalog of the bizarre, isn't it? All in one place.
It really is. Physical events, biological effects, environmental weirdness, psychological stuff.
Yeah.
It covered the whole spectrum. You can see why the ranch became such a focus.
Absolutely. That concentration of diverse anomalies is what makes it so enigmatic.
And that hitchhiker effect really stands out. The book gives examples of stuff following investigators back to places like Washington, D.C., affecting their families.
Yeah.
If that's real, the implications are huge.
Mind-boggling, yeah.
Now, the book does say AAWSA used scientific tools Surveillance gear, environmental sensors, medical tests, data analysis, those communication experiments.
So they tried to approach it scientifically.
They tried. But you look at that list, you can see the challenge, right?
Yeah.
How do you scientifically study stuff that's transient, unpredictable, maybe even deliberately deceptive?
It breaks the mold of controlled experiments. You can't just replicate this stuff in a lab.
Exactly. So a lot of these really wild claims end up relying heavily on, witness testimony, anecdotes.
Which is tricky scientifically speaking, necessary sometimes, but hard to verify objectively.
Right. And concepts like that infectious agent model. It feels a bit like a metaphor, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A way to try and grasp something that just didn't fit their existing science.
A framework to hang these bizarre experiences on, perhaps, when standard explanations failed. You highlight a crucial tension there, applying scientific methods to phenomena that seem to defy those very methods.
So let's step back. Why should you, our listener, care about all this weirdness? What are the big takeaways here?
Good question. Beyond the sheer strangeness factor.
Right. Well, one major theme is definitely government secrecy and transparency, or the lack thereof.
Mm-hmm.
The book paints AAWSA as this deeply hidden thing, contrasting it with ATIP. It raises big questions. What does the government know? What are they not telling us? Was it deliberate misdirection? For anyone interested in government accountability, this is pretty provocative.
It feeds right into the whole UAP disclosure debate. If this book is accurate, the government's been involved much deeper, for longer, and in weirder ways than generally admitted. Discrepancies like this really can damage public trust.
No kidding. Then there's the UAP paranormal connection. That's maybe the book's most central and challenging idea.
That they aren't separate things.
Exactly. The book argues forcefully they're interconnected, that UAPs and ghosts and poltergeists and weird creatures, maybe it's all part of the same underlying phenomenon. It completely challenges how we categorize this stuff.
That's a huge conceptual leap. It blurs lines between, physics and something else. It suggests we need a much bigger, more integrated model to understand reality, potentially.
Which leads straight to the methodological problems. How do you even study this stuff?
Right. If it's transient, interactive, maybe even tricksy.
Yeah. Traditional science struggles. It makes you wonder, are our current tools and methods even enough? Do we need totally new ways of investigating, new ways of knowing, to even get a handle on places like Skinwalker Ranch?
It definitely pushes the boundaries of scientific inquiry. It forces a look at the limits of our current understanding, our paradigms. Are there things we just aren't equipped to measure or comprehend yet?
And finally, the book consistently ties all this back to national security.
That framing is key.
It is. Whether it's worrying about potential advanced weapons, unknown threats, other countries may be exploiting this stuff, or even just the health impacts on their own personnel, they keep linking the weirdness to defense concerns.
It takes it out of the realm of just, spooky stories and puts it into the domain of government responsibility. If there's a potential threat or advantage, however strange, they feel they need to understand it.
Okay, so let's try and put this in a bit more context. Skinwalker Ranch. It had a history before AWSA, right?
Oh, yeah, a long one. You've got the Native American legends, the Navajo skinwalker stories, the Ute viewing the area as taboo, a place to avoid. Deep history there.
And then, more recently, the Sherman family in the 90s. Their experiences really put the ranch on the modern paranormal map.
Absolutely. That led to Robert Bigelow buying it and starting his NIDS investigation.
Right. But, interestingly, the family before the Shermans, the Myers, who were there for like 60 years.
They reported nothing unusual, apparently.
Exactly. Which adds another layer of complexity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Makes you wonder about observer effects or something.
It does. Is it the place? Is it the people? Is it the interaction? It complicates the narrative.
And it's worth comparing this book, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, to the earlier one, Hunt for the Skinwalker, from 2005. Kelleher and Knapp wrote that one too, about the NIS days.
How do they compare?
Well, Pentagon feels like a major escalation. It shifts from a private study to this alleged huge government program. There's much more emphasis on that creepy hitchhiker effect and the national security angle. And, of course, it introduces the whole ASAP versus ATIP thing.
So the narrative definitely evolved, became more high stakes, more government-centric.
Yeah, it suggests the perceived importance, maybe the perceived threat, really ramped up between the NIDS era and the ADOSEP era.
A significant shift in framing.
Which brings us to maybe the biggest point of confusion and controversy. ADOSEP versus ATIP.
The conflicting stories.
Right. The book presents AIAVAD.
Yeah.
But the narrative many people know involves ATIC and Luis Elizondo. And they seem well, different.
Oh, different.
Different names, obviously. Different agencies supposedly running them. DIA for ADOP, maybe USDI for ATIP. Different funding talk. Different primary focus, ADCIP covering the whole paranormal spectrum. ATIP seemingly more focused on military UAP encounters.
Different key people highlighted too, presumably.
Exactly. And crucially, opposite stances on Skinwalker Ranch. The book makes it central to ADOYSIP. But Elizondo has reportedly said he specifically avoided the ranch because he had concerns about ADOSAFE's focus there.
Wow, okay, so direct contradiction on the role of the ranch.
Pretty much. These inconsistencies, they make you wonder.
Oh.
Were there two separate programs? Was one a cover for the other? Was it just bureaucratic chaos?
Yeah.
Or deliberate obfuscation?
Whatever the reason, it creates a lot of confusion and doesn't exactly build public trust when the official story, or lack thereof, seems so fragmented.
You said it. So how did the book land? How was it received?
Well, within the communities already interested in UAPs and the paranormal, it seems to have hit pretty hard.
Positive reaction.
Generally, yeah. Good online ratings. Endorsements from people like Harry Reid himself, who said it gave the full picture of AWSP. Whitley Strieber called it hugely important. Jeffrey Kripal saw it as potentially groundbreaking. A lot of readers found it fascinating, revealing, validating even.
Validating their suspicions about this stuff being connected, maybe.
Exactly. It resonated with people who already felt there was more going on than just conventional explanations allowed.
But it wasn't all positive, right? There were criticisms.
Oh, definitely. Some found the narrative a bit jumpy, maybe hard to follow structurally.
Okay.
But the main criticism, unsurprisingly, was the evidence, or the perceived lack of it for the really extraordinary claims.
Back to the anecdotes.
Pretty much. Heavy reliance on witness accounts. Some critics questioned the scientific rigor, calling it weird science, and mixed feelings on the detail. Some wanted more data, others felt it got repetitive.
Fair enough. Extraordinary claims need extraordinary evidence, and anecdotes alone often don't cut it for skeptics.
That's the fundamental challenge with this kind of material.
But regardless of the criticisms, the book undeniably made waves, didn't it?
It seems so. It definitely brought this idea of deep government interest in the paranormal side of UAP to a much wider audience.
And it really challenged that ATIP story that had become dominant.
Yeah.
Pushed the UAP paranormal link more into the mainstream conversation.
Yeah, and you have to wonder if it played a role, even indirectly, in the growing pressure that led to the official UAP task force and now ARO. It helped shift the conversation.
So, wrapping this up, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon gives us this compelling, though definitely controversial story. A secret Pentagon program, AAWSAP, supposedly diving headfirst into the bizarre mix of UAP and paranormal stuff at Skinwalker Ranch.
A story full of extraordinary claims and lingering questions about the proof.
Absolutely. We've walked through the wild phenomena reported, the debate over the evidence, and what it all might mean. And it leaves you thinking, doesn't it? Like that DOD clearance. Okay, it's not an endorsement. We got that. But what does their review process for something this weird actually involve?
Good question. What constitutes classified when you're talking about poltergeists or interdimensional portals?
Right. And if that hitchhiker effect is even remotely real, what does that say about consciousness? Reality. Can strangeness literally rub off on you?
The philosophical implications are staggering.
And how do we balance anecdotal accounts, which might be all we have for some of this, with the need for scientific proof when the phenomena themselves seem to resist standard investigation?
The perennial question in Forteana and paranormal research.
And finally, what's the long-term cost of government secrecy around this stuff, whatever this stuff actually is? What does it do to public trust, to scientific progress?
Big questions, ones that go way beyond just this one book. They touch on how we understand our world, the limits of science, and the relationship between citizens and the state when it comes to the unknown.
Exactly. So for you, our listener, consider this deep dive just a starting point. Mull over those questions. Maybe check out the book yourself. See what you think. There's a ton to unpack here.
It's definitely a rabbit hole.
It certainly is. Hopefully this conversation gave you a good map to start exploring it, a shortcut to being well-informed on a truly mind-bending topic. We'll be back soon with another deep dive.